host. Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell is joining us in studio today to talk about a variety of things happening in Nashville. What is going on, Freddie? How are you?
I can't wait to talk to Congressman Burchett about how you bumped him for me.
Yeah, do that. Give him a call and let him know. By the way, in the interest of full disclosure, I was on a break and I still had my headphones on, and Freddie walked in without me seeing him, and he scared the you-know-what out of me. So,
we like having
guy.
such an open-door policy here that we can walk in and startle you.
How's it going?
I think, look, today is a good day because I have arrived and am able to talk to you without dealing with a tragedy.
Oh, no. I think the last time we spoke was...
The last two times, I think.
I believe so.
We were in the middle of tornadoes and then the snowstorm, so
hopefully everything is nice and calm today.
We've got everything unlocked today.
Let's talk about some good things, and then we can talk about some things that maybe are a little more controversial in your administration, in the early months of your administration. Good things. The groundbreaking for the new stadium has now happened. We've got earth moving around, progress being made. Give us a progress report.
Yeah, so it's good news in two different dimensions. One, the Titan Stadium is on track. They broke ground just a few days ago, and we have kept pace with them. Our Chief Development Officer, Bob Mendez, has delivered to the Metro Council last night for their first formal consideration a few pieces of legislation related to the East Bank. Just a few weeks before that, we delivered our first capital spending plan, trying to make sure we are both living within our means and investing across the city so that it's not just the footprint of the Titan Stadium we're doing, but really trying to take care of the whole city. So, yeah, lots of good news in there.
What can folks expect from a traffic perspective? And just, I understand that things in transition sometimes can get frustrating. There are a lot of people moving around in that part of the world. What can people expect over the next several months into next year even?
So what we saw at the groundbreaking was it looks like the Titans have a plan that you'll see even by this upcoming NFL season, the framing of the new stadium kind of emerging from the ground. So they will be using existing parking lots for laydown areas for construction. We do have some moving parts over there. We know, to your point, we're actually going to be creating new infrastructure, new connective roadways over there. Probably some people who've been paying attention to this have seen this idea of a boulevard that kind of runs along most of the East Bank, including into Oracle's portion of River North, just a little bit north of where the Titans are, and kind of down through that. But we've still got some work to do with CSX. We've still got some work to do with our friends and partners over at TDOT. So there will be some disruption over there, as there is at any construction site. But I will say the Titans are working closely with our East Bank team. They're working closely with NDOT. We're trying to improve access to the overall site, even as we know some of it's going to be torn up.
Talking about traffic, we recently saw the repair and reconstruction of Broadway, that area of Broadway across, I guess, the train tracks and whatnot. Were you pleased with how that went?
Yeah, I think one of the most notable parts about that was, one, TDOT moved very quickly. From the moment that the bridge came down and then you could drive back across it. I was impressed, having represented that area of the city on Metro Council. Honestly, the level of disruption there for people coming into downtown, I was surprised how few complaints I heard about it. I think overall, NDOT, TDOT, MNPD worked effectively to get it done, and I think the overall bridge is a better experience than the old one.
One other question that I brought up, because I was just reading an article about it before you stepped into the studio, is the issue of Monell's. And there's some question about whether or not Monell's will survive. And being a relative newbie to the community, I was completely misrepresenting the story, and you kind of corrected me on a couple of the details. I thought that this had been a building that had been out there since the 30s. The restaurant had been near the airport. The airport constructed itself around it. And tell me the real deal about what's going on there.
Monell's as an institution will continue well into the future, and it is a Nashville tradition. But the base operation of Monell's is actually in our Germantown neighborhood. And their whole premise is family-style dining, and it's wonderful. At one point, they had an outpost in Berry Hill. They've opened this one, again, a little over a decade ago out by the airport. There is this old manor building out there, but it's a building that I went in there just a few months ago to celebrate the reelection of Councilmember Russ Bradford. It is not a building in great condition, and the airport will tell you straight up that their ability to invest in it from the standpoint of their finances is effectively nil because of the way that they manage their grants and abilities as an aviation industry.
So that's something that is happening, that the expectation is that at some point that facility will close, the airport will use it for their own purposes.
We had Doug Crulin actually over to the mayor's office today speaking with media, primarily about spring break travel, but this question about Monell's at the Manor did come up. They advised that, I think there would be interest if somebody wanted to relocate the building. That's a possibility, but the airport talked very clearly about the terms of their financial capabilities, and they're not able to reinvest in it as a future home for a restaurant. I think they're thinking about how to operate an effective airport in a growing city. Speaking of the airport, give us a status report on all of the construction that's going on there. So some good news there is we had some concerns after seeing the lead into holiday travel around Thanksgiving, where you might have seen this.
It was crazy.
Your listeners might have seen. I mean, you at one point had people getting off on the side of the interstate to walk into the airport. So we have seen some rearrangements on site. Doug and his team came back in December before Christmas with a 17-point plan. They came in today to refresh that with folks in advance of spring break, which for them, the entire month of March is a busy travel season, both for people coming into Nashville and Nashvillians going to other areas for spring break travel. But they are in progress in a lot of that overall plan. They've actually worked very closely with TDOT to accelerate some improvements around the area. They've worked on their campus to make things a little easier. I know they heard some from some frustrated folks about the cell phone waiting area and a few things like that. But they've also made a lot of progress on their ground transportation center. And what we saw around the Christmas time holiday was dramatic improvements over where we were at Thanksgiving. There's a lot of different things going on at the same time to accomplish the same goal, and that is to facilitate traffic in and out of the facility and to best facilitate travel in and out of the airport. Right. What is the end date time frame in terms of the construction of the interstate around it? When will you hope to be standing before the airport with the new construction completed? So they have just completed a big piece of a strategic plan and execution called B&A Vision. That was about a 5 or 6 year process. Now they're looking at a new program called New Horizons. They're working on a new terminal. They've just added and opened a new international arrivals area. So they are doing a lot of things on the campus with runways, terminals to accommodate the increasing passenger growth, which is continuing. I mean, we are in several years now of setting records every year for passenger travel into and out of B&A. I think it's an exciting time for the city, but we've got to make sure people can get in and out safely. We've had some conversations with them already in the past few months about transit access, about ride sharing services like Uber and Lyft, taxi access, all of those things. I think the airport, kind of like the East Bank, is going to be a little bit in motion, but we're expecting this accelerated timeline on Donaldson Pike improvements to probably be done sometime in the next couple of years. You've seen if you come off of I-40 eastbound and head into the airport from that direction, there's been already an expansion that you can see there. They're continuing to try to navigate people more effectively into their parking garages, and they're about to have a grand opening for a new hotel out there. Well, what is the mayor's life? Let's take a peek behind the curtain. When the story broke, I was out of town when this story broke, and I understand that Transportation Security Agency, the federal government's involved, a lot of different security apparatus involved. When the woman went around security, you know the story I'm talking about? No, I didn't hear this one. What, have you not heard that she was in the Nashville airport and it's primarily a TSA story, but I'm surprised if you haven't heard about it, where somehow she got on a flight without going through security. Oh, no, didn't hear about that. And they became aware of it when she was literally in the air. And so, I mean, everything it turned out was okay. She wasn't trying to do anything nefarious. She just didn't have a ticket, and somehow she got around security. I don't know if you are in the day-to-day operational, structure of finding out things like that. For some, so I'll pivot to a little bit of a scenario that is a little more operationally involved with Metro. For what they do on the airport's campus, they have their own police, right? They do have TSA. Customs and Border Patrol has an outpost at the airport as well. So there are a lot of law enforcement and security capabilities on site. I have gone out and toured their operations center. Overall, I would say the campus is incredibly secure and their processes are pretty tight. That one surprises me a little bit given what I have seen, especially because the airlines also have a pretty sophisticated series of checks. I mean, to have bypassed security, but even to get to the point where
she got on a plane. I mean, it was right? Go look up the story. It's fascinating. I don't know how she gets on a plane without having the little beep.
But those kinds of moments where it's primarily at the airport, self-contained. I mean, if there were something that were spilling off of their campus or had ramifications for the city, we would hear about that. Now, the flip version of that is, I was very involved almost instantly in this other recent tragedy where you had the small plane crash that was around the footprint of John Toon, the smaller airport. In that moment, we had direct and immediate contact with our Office of Emergency Management, with MNPD, with the fire department, because all of those entities were deeply engaged. T.2, they had to secure the site. We knew because it was in the footprint of a federal highway that NTSB was going to be involved. We had a local FAA representative involved that day. NTSB arrived the next day. Those kinds of things we tend to be very in the mix on.
Let's talk about another issue that you and I have spoken on since I've known you, the Speedway and where we are with that. Last time you and I talked about it directly, you were just set to become mayor, just set to get sworn in.
Yep.
You said, Matt, I've got to review it. I've got to take a look at it comprehensively and figure out all of the details. And I will get back with you when I have settled in my mind as where I am. Where are you on this issue?
So two things have happened since then. One, we did sit down and kind of look at all of the deal points. And I think we have, I guess we've got a framework where we would say, here is the kind of thing where we think we could bring the team, Bristol, the fairgrounds all together. But you may have also seen this. One of the things that has made this process more challenging is that there has been a group out there that has filed a potential charter amendment, and they are going to try to get through the Charter Review Commission and go seek signatures and put something on the ballot that would actually remove racing as a requirement from the fairgrounds. It's tough to imagine creating a deal there in that environment of uncertainty, and so we're keeping a careful eye on what that referendum process is looking like.
So are you supportive of a referendum to change the charter that would eliminate racing from the fairgrounds facility and include affordable housing as an alternative to the racing?
This is a tough one because I grew up in a Nashville that had racing. This is not something I have sought as mayor. This is something I don't know if this is just private Nashvillians or if there's a larger organization out there behind it. I'll just say it this way. We are certainly not, as an administration, going to encourage people to go participate in this referendum effort.
So, but do you believe the referendum effort puts any decision-making on the part of because the Fairgrounds Board has already approved the Bristol project.
Correct.
Does this put any decision-making on the part of the council on hold?
I think it would be, I'll just say, I think taking a deal through the Metro Council, which would be a necessity for any deal, would be nearly impossible in an environment where there is uncertainty about the referendum.
Well, people like me have suggested that's the entire plan to begin with. That's Ingram's plan to prevent any movement on the Speedway deal so that he can keep that property status quo. I believe he has an ultimate goal. That's just my take. I'm not asking you to have a take on it. But if that's the ultimate goal of these folks, they're stymieing progress on the part of the city council, or rather Metro Council.
Well, hard for me to sit here and disagree with that. I mean, I think the Metro Council is looking at this as carefully as we are, but I will tell you, if we needed 27 votes right now for something at the fairgrounds, it would be very difficult to secure.
Let's talk transit in the last few minutes that we have. I mean, obviously it's a big deal, and you have put a plan together that would ask the residents of Nashville to accept a tax increase for the purpose of improving transit in and around the area. Talk to me about it.
So, yeah, years ago, a bipartisan effort at the state level while Bill Haslam was still governor called the Improve Act set up some things for regional transportation initiatives and then also dedicated funding. Under that, you have a bucket of a couple of options that you can go secure long-term funding where instead of what we just did in this capital spending program where, this year we might do $5 million for sidewalks and get a couple more miles. Next year we might do 10. This would give us a program to modernize our traffic grid, expand sidewalks and connectivity into communities where you don't even have access to your major corridors, get our bus system so that it's not sending every bus into and out of downtown over a multi-year period. And it would also give us much, much greater access to repatriate tax dollars that we're sending to Washington.
And the expected vote date will be this fall?
November 5th. Yep. The main election day.
And what's your main message to people who are considering whether or not to support this?
So the main message here is we know cost of living concerns have been top of mind for Nashvillians. We think for a lot of people, this is going to let them drive down their household cost of transportation. We know that I'm one of them, people who've been stuck in traffic as traffic has increased at red lights where there are no cars coming the other direction. In fact, coming over here, we hit some, I'll just call them poorly timed traffic signals. We think...
As mayor, do you have a little notebook, write that down when that happens to you?
You better believe I'm one of the top people submitting Hub Nashville requests. And I'm sure I drive Erin Williams, our Hub Nashville coordinator, crazy with the number of things I send to her attention. But that's also part of the message, too. We want to do those small, simple, proven things well over a long period of time. And so my message would be, there is something in this program that should benefit everyone. If you are riding the bus, you're going to have multiple opportunities. If you never ride a bus as a motorist, you'll have better traffic and safety on the roads. If you are trying to walk with your children to school right now in a neighborhood that doesn't have them, we just did a walk to school day down at Paragon Mills. And right off of that corridor, there's a half mile where we were picking up kids on the way to school. And if we didn't have NDOT and MMPD support, they would have been walking in the shoulder. As
mayor, do you look at your role in this regard as an advocate for the position, or do you look at this as, hey, I'm presenting what will happen if we do pass it, what will happen if we don't pass it, and ultimately it's up to the voters to make the decision as to whether or not they want to carry that burden?
So, we're trying to put together a program that we think a majority of Nashvillians will be able to support. But to your point, we have a transit team and transportation team. We've got a guy who's been doing transportation policy planning for a long time that joined our team a few months ago. And a couple of support people in the administration on that. They're trying to look at the dozens of plans, the tens of thousands of points of input we've had over the decade, working with WeGo, our transit authority, and our local Department of Transportation, NDOT, who are already moving toward something in greater alignment with one another and saying, can we accelerate this, make it predictable, reliable over a long period of time? We would certainly prefer that people support it at the end of the day, but I think what we want to do is test what we think is true, which is I think a lot of Nashvillians want to see improvements.
I want to ask this question only because, we have this fancy super text feature where people can text in questions for the mayor. And a lot of them are saying on the subject of taxes, they want to know about property taxes. Yep. They want to know if we're going to be static with property taxes for the foreseeable future. What do you say, Mayor?
Right now, I came into office expecting we are in the 5th year of a budget cycle. My goal all along has been, let's let the assessor's office do their work next year. And then we'll take a fresh look. I am trying to hold the line on property taxes. I will say the scariest thing our finance director has said is revenues are flat. I know there's going to be a lot of concern if we come out and can't cover a Metro pay plan, but I will say every day I walk in and say our goal is not to raise property taxes this year.
And finally, just a general question about the issue of crime. I don't know that Nashville has seen necessarily a rise in crime like we've seen in other metropolitan areas around the country over the last 6 to 12 months. How would you assess the job of the Metro Nashville Police Force, and how would you assess the situation?
MMPD is doing very well. The combination of investments we made last year actually drove down violent crime in almost every category. The one exception you may be aware of, and Nashville's not unique in this regard, has been auto thefts. They have made some changes starting February 1st. Chief Drake implemented a new special operations approach to auto thefts and burglaries. They have already made several arrests under that program. I expect, given where we are in tracking violent crime again, we are down year over year significantly in terms of homicides. That's the kind of trend you want to see. The good news, a couple of good points of news to share here. Chief Drake has had a good staffing plan. I think by the end of calendar year 2024, we will finally have all of our staff positions at MNPD filled. They've done really well with recruiting. The very first thing I did in office was, I walked downstairs after being sworn in and signed the certificates for session 104. We've brought several new classes into the academy, including a lot of lateral recruits who are coming from other departments to join MNPD specifically because we've been intentionally recruiting. Overall, I think we're going to see that translate into presence in the community. By next year, we'll open a new precinct in Southeast. We just are about to cut the ribbon on a new police outpost on Broadway to try to keep our entertainment district visible, safe, and Garth Brooks has actually been a co-investor in that project with the city. So we're making a lot of progress there on public safety.
I've been proud of myself. We've had you on for almost a half an hour, and I haven't asked you about Lower Broad yet. So I was proud of that. I haven't invited you to Robert's Western for a
one of these days. I feel like we're still supposed to get out there and do this out of the studio and get a beer somewhere and lunch.
We will make it happen. Look. Here comes the softball. Where for the next 2 hours I'll get accused of asking you softball questions. But have there been surprises? Do you feel like your legs are underneath you? In terms of, I mean, obviously you were aware of how the Metro Council worked. You were aware of how city government worked. You're not unfamiliar with the mayor's office. It's different when it's your name on the door. Biggest surprises, biggest challenges so far?
It's been interesting. The Metro Council has had, I've watched some of the policies that they've been putting forward, and a few of those have surprised me. You may have seen this recent controversy over some zoning bills that came out there. There have been some discussions that I wouldn't have expected to be so controversial up there. I think they're trying to figure out their way. Coming from the Metro Council and with a couple of former council members also on our team in the mayor's office, I think, we've heard from some Metro departments too, a little bit of head scratching, and I think everybody's kind of waiting for that dust to settle, maybe for council to get their legs under them. There have been a couple of community conversations that we knew would be messy coming into office. You may have seen some of the discussion about the Metro Arts Commission. We had this situation with the Morris Memorial Building, another historic property, those kinds of things. I'll say a pleasant surprise has been we've been very well received at the state, both the governor's office and both chambers of the General Assembly. We've had good communication. I think that's the key to almost everything we do. We're trying to be attentive to state legislative concerns. We think to your point about crime, Nashville's doing so well that the state's focus right now is mostly on Memphis. And so we love being in an atmosphere where we can try to demonstrate we're governing the city effectively, respecting taxpayers, and having good open lines of communication with the state. So
we'll do it again very soon, Mayor. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being willing to sit down and speak to the people of Nashville, Tennessee. I appreciate that.
Glad to do it. Thanks for having us.
Freddie O'Connell, Mayor of Nashville. We'll be back in a moment. It's 1 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.